This Monero Matteo video is sponsored by Cake Wallet. Safely store, send, receive, and trade your Monero on Cake Wallet on Android and iOS. Hola, Monero Matteo. Welcome back. Good to be with you guys today. So, yes, it's been a few weeks, hasn't it? It's been a few weeks. I planned on going through the whole Lent without making a video or a post at all on social media. But you're able to see how well that's going. Not so well. But Lent otherwise is going pretty good, and I hope that it's going very well for you guys as well. But honestly, it's just sometimes you check the news, sometimes you check social media, and I saw this, Zero Hedge article that was trying to meet the Bitcoin pumping quota that they have every day, apparently, because they're coming out with a new article every single day about why Bitcoin's awesome, how it's great. They barely ever talk about Monero. I think they've made one article about it. It wasn't even about it, really. It was about a hedge fund manager or founder who had gotten into Monero, and it was just sort of like a side note. And it said in the article, Monero is basically what everyone thinks Bitcoin is. It's actually the true cryptocurrency. Bitcoin's trash. Like, that's essentially what it said. And we had made a video about it. Go check it out. It's like Hedge Fund Bros by Monero, something like this. And yet, every single day, they're coming out with new articles about why Bitcoin's going to save the world. It's ridiculous. And a lot of the people who comment on these Zero Hedge articles on the website or on Twitter, they say the same thing. They're like, oh, here we go, Zero Hedge back with another pumper article. And all these people are like, yeah, I stopped reading after Bitcoin is awesome, or Bitcoin's going to save the world. And it's just so ridiculous. And they had posted this one article that I just had to respond to. Typically, I'm able to hand wave it away because Zero Hedge just has crazy good information 90% of the time. I mean, I really like Zero Hedge. It's a great site. But they had this article come out where it was inspired by a Twitter thread that we had responded to about a month ago. And every single point made in the article, we had thoroughly refuted with one of our videos. So we had to put out there a link to the video. I had to do it. I couldn't just let it go. And maybe some of you guys had watched it. You're like, hey, Matt's back. And then I thought to myself, maybe I should do an update because I'm looking at what's going on Twitter. And I'm looking at some more Bitcoin bros who are coming to the Monero Bro Battalion. And I'm telling you, our thesis is really starting to play out. Part of the reason why I haven't made a lot of videos, not just throughout Lent, but even before that, is because I think we've honestly made the case. We've talked about unrealized capital gains tax, which we're going to do today. We've talked about inflation, how that's going to lead to price controls, and how it's going to lead to an expansion of the black market, how that's going to be bullish for Monero. We're going to talk again about that today. We've talked about Haveno, which we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about other things that just update you guys as to what's going on in the world and why it's just compounding the super hyper mega bullish case for Monero that we've already laid out in great detail. But it's like all I feel like I'm doing is just updating you guys on the success of the thesis that we put out. And wonderfully, we're seeing more people, not just from the Monero space, but from the Bitcoin space in particular, who are starting to realize everything that we have realized over the last year. And it's really good to see. I don't know if they watch our videos. I don't know if they're just piecing this stuff together as we are, as we've done. But I think it's becoming blatantly obvious to people just how much utility Monero has in this environment that we're going into relative to other cryptocurrencies, which portray themselves as competitors to Monero, and how useful it's going to be in this time. And I still think it's going to go hyper mega freaking nuclear at some point. And I think the transition is picking up pace. It had already been happening when we started to make videos, before we started to make videos even, with people like Jeff Berwick, with people like the Crypto Vigilante, and others that I had seen and were inspired by. They had come from the Bitcoin world, and they decided to themselves, hey, you know what? This has flaws. And we're looking at sort of like this 1984 technocratic totalitarian dystopia that we're moving into. And, private cryptos make a lot of sense. I'm surprised people haven't caught on to this yet. And those were the first early adopters. And then it was a couple people coming to the space, Kevin Wad, Yours truly. Doug's always been around. He's known this stuff since the beginning. By the way, Monerotopia is going to be key. You guys should go. I'm unfortunately not going to be able to make it. It's just weird timing. It's like in the middle of the week during the last week of tax season. So unfortunately, I'm not going to make it out. And a lot of you guys have messaged me, are you going to make it? Are you going to make it? Unfortunately, I won't. But hopefully I can catch the live stream. Hopefully I can catch the visuals. But it sounds like it's going to be amazing. You should get your ticket now if you haven't already. But, yeah, the thesis is just totally coming together. It's really amazing to see. So I have to give you guys an update on this. And I had already violated my commitment to not make any posts, so I'm just going to make another one. That's typically how it works, right? You do one thing bad, and it's like, well, I already did one thing bad. I might as well go all the way, right? And it's not necessarily bad that I'm making this video. It's just I said I wasn't going to be making one. Regardless, who cares? Let's just get into it, guys. Let's just get into it. Good to be back. There's so much to talk about. I've really missed out on a few things, and I've been so tempted to make videos over the last 2-3 weeks, especially because some of you had reached out to me with a different perspective on the last subject that we were talking about on the channel, which was people sending their crypto to fund the Ukrainian military, which was just insane. I was rather upset by this, but I've come to reorient my perspective of this. It's not good, mind you, but Tony, you had reached out and said something key to me. You had said that, look, we have a fallen nature, and our fallen nature is being ever more embraced by the world, and so we should already anticipate and expect that any technology which we come out with is going to be, to some degree, and perhaps to a bigger degree than otherwise would be good, used against us. And I think that with Monero, with guns, with any technology really, it's up to people like us to get out there and tell people how to use this stuff properly, maturely, and in a good, decent way. Because any technology, it's going to be like kids playing with fire, right? We just, because of our nature, we're obviously going to use it for nefarious purposes like funding wars and things like this. Now, it's good that at least the people in crypto are no longer going around with their hats backwards being like, dude, bro, we're going to end all war with our crypto, which is always ridiculous. But now we can see that being ridiculous, so we don't have to hear about that Hopi Pollyanna stuff anymore. It's good. But we can have more realistic perspective and say, hey, we shouldn't get dismayed and despondent by the obvious reality that this stuff is probably going to be used for a lot of evil. We should just go out there and speak our truth and encourage people to use it wisely, to build parallel economies, to trade amongst themselves in order to get out of this crazy technocratic totalitarian system that is being built around us. And that gave me a better perspective, so I did want to come out and just make those comments because I think that is a refreshing perspective. So with that being said, let's just get into it. This guy right here, Michael, let me just make sure I'm recording. This guy right here, Michael, is just super based. This is like my new favorite crypto bro. One of them anyway. I have a lot, but as far as in the Bitcoin bro battalion or Bitcoin bro sector of the internet, I haven't come out with a name for you guys, but this is the most base guy I've run into. And this is a guy that I used to pay attention to about a month or two ago. And he was actually kind of annoyed from what I could perceive with Monero people, because whenever he would comment on Bitcoin and like, the Bitfinex hackers getting scooped up by the feds or like, some problem with the Coinjoin, he'd be like, oh, it's so annoying, these Monero people always talking about their privacy. And it's like, oh, you could use the privacy guide and things like this. Actually, I don't know if he was saying that. Other Bitcoin bros were saying that. But he was one of these people who was like, I keep hearing a lot from Monero people, and it's just, Bitcoin can make those upgrades. But I think he's one of the people now who we predicted would be making a turnaround. Not him specifically, but like Bitcoin bros in general. Like there's going to be a wave that happens. You're going to have a few Bitcoin bros who start to wake up, and they're going to be tied into this game theoretical dynamic that we've talked about. Because the Bitcoin bros, they talk all the time about game theory and how governments are going to adopt this stuff. The first governments are going to benefit the most because they're going to put it on their balance sheet, and then more governments are going to come along because they're going to want to join the system and get off this sinking monetary ship, which central banks have blown holes in. And so it's going to be like a race to get into this stuff, and it's just going to compound on each other. That's going to happen with Bitcoin and Monero. You're going to have like this compounding, S-curve that takes place where a few of the Bitcoin bros trade sides. They say, yeah, there are just so many problems with Bitcoin. They're just not being addressed. And, like this guy, they're going to tweet out at Dan Held. They're going to tweet out at Adam Back. They're going to tweet out at other prominent Bitcoin people and say, hey, why isn't this being addressed? They're going to tweet out at Andres Antonopoulos, hey, you said in 2015 that mining centralization could be a problem, fungibility is a problem. You guys are going to address it later, quote unquote. Yeah, what's going on with that, by the way? I haven't heard you guys mention that recently. You're going to see more of this, and it could be that people are now focusing in on this because we're kind of like in this intermission period between crises, right? Whenever there's like a crisis, everyone takes their mind off like the deets in regards to the cryptos, and they focus on Ukraine, or they focus on the Kufa thing, or they focus on the newest crisis, right? We're kind of like in this intermediate period between crises and escalations where people can actually like leave the movie theater and talk about what they've seen, like, hey, what'd you think of this crypto's performance, and what happened at the Canadian freedom protest? How did it do? Oh, I thought it did terrible. People got arrested. People had their Bitcoin tracked. What do you think about Monero? Like, we're in this sort of like water cooler chat period where we can sort of brainstorm with each other and sort of compare results and perspectives. And I think now people are starting to say, yeah, things are getting pretty serious out there, aren't they? We're going into a pretty dark, tyrannical type of deal. And I'm actually not sure about Bitcoin's privacy. I'm not sure that this is going to work. I hear that Coinjoins are starting to discriminate against people's crypto, where you can only Coinjoin with other people who have non-KYC Bitcoin or things like this. We're going to get to that here in a sec, but again, it's going to be a wave that's going to turn into a panic. It's going to be a trickle that turns into a flood. And we've predicted this since the beginning. And at some point, you're going to see like 100% moves in Monero per day. The day that I decided to stop posting, Monero went up, I think, like 30% in a day. This was in response to 25,000 people and their addresses being blacklisted on Coinbase, I think. I think we've got that story pulled up too. We'll get to it. But people like woke up like, whoa, holy crap. I didn't even know people could do that with Bitcoin. I got to get out of here. I got to get into Monero. I didn't even know about this blacklisting stuff. I didn't even know that they could track your Bitcoin off the exchange and that they could kick you off the exchange if it goes to an exchange you don't like. And there are articles now coming out now that says that Coinbase is going to want information on where it is you're sending your crypto if you're sending it off of Coinbase to another exchange or to just another person in general. Do you guys remember, like, I think this was like 7-8 months ago we were talking about this, but it was proposed in Europe how they wanted to, identify who was taking their crypto off exchanges and where they were going to be sending it to. They wanted to ban anonymous wallets. And so many of the smug Bitcoin bros, they're like, oh, they think that they can stop our Bitcoin, dude. Like, they're still at that stage. They haven't conceded to the power of Satoshi yet. And now you're starting to see people worry about this. They're like, yeah, they're actually going to do this. We could actually be in trouble. It's like, of course they're going to do this. Sorry, did you guys just think like they'd be on board with the Bitcoin bro revolution? No. Like, we'll get to the CBDCs and the development of the CBDCs. We've noticed a concomitant crackdown with sort of the development of this map here that shows how each country is developing their CBDC And just looking at this map, I don't remember the last time we looked at it. I think it was like a month ago. But more countries are now in the pilot stage of the CBDC. More countries are now in active development of the CBDC. And this is just becoming ever more updated. And as this becomes ever more updated, as they get closer to the global rollout of the CBDC, which there's probably going to be a big crisis to precede that and justify, then, it's just going to be a huge crackdown on people's, when I say private cryptos, I don't mean Monero, but like cryptos that aren't CBDCs, non-CBDC cryptos. There's going to be a crackdown. And in Russia, there's a little bit of a crackdown when they went into the pilot stage, but they deliberated amongst themselves, the Russian central bank and the finance department. They talked about it. They were like, hey, so if we ban this stuff altogether, the problem is people are going to use cryptos that we can't easily track, we can't easily tax, and we can't mine and set up an industry for with all of our gas. Russia has a lot of gas, of course. We talked about Gazprom. But yeah, we could be missing out on a lot of revenue. We could be missing out on a lot of good data that would help us surveil our population. And so maybe we should actually allow Bitcoin to be integrated into a kind of legal framework, because otherwise people are going to go to the black market of crypto, which means Monero, right? And people could actually start to use cryptos that we can't get a good hold on. And so what they decided was that they're going to integrate it into this huge KYC framework. It's totally dystopian if you look into it. You've got to like pass tests if you want to buy a certain amount of Bitcoin. It's crazy. But yeah, we're going to see more of that. And the KYC is going to get insane. And I don't understand these people in the Bitcoin bro world who say, oh, well, we'll fix this KYC problem, guys. We just have to Coinjoin more. We just have to take it off the grid. But at the same time, like, they're advocating for governments to adopt this stuff, which means that more governments are going to take this stuff as tax payment, presumably, or maybe more corporations are going to take this stuff as payment in general. And then it's going to be on the grid. It's never going to get off the grid. It's going to be tracked from there. And you're going to have fewer and fewer non-KYC Bitcoin, and then it's just all going to be on the grid, right? And they could come out with an executive order, guys. I anticipate this could probably be coming maybe in the next 6 to 12 months, but they could just say, hey, well, maybe I shouldn't put a time period on the prediction. I don't really know. But I anticipate this could be part of the program where they say, hey, any Bitcoin which hasn't been identified or linked to any particular taxpayer or to any recognizable entity, it's automatically tainted. You can't spend it. If it's not on the grid, if it's not part of our database, then you can't spend it. We can't have people accept it. That could be part of the system. That could be part of the program. And anyways, I'm kind of ranting at this point, but yeah, we're going to see a bigger crackdown on that. Let me just go back to Michael. Holy moly, this is a long opening. We haven't even gotten to the first tweet yet. This is going to be a long one. We have a lot to catch up on, so be patient with me. So Michael, he says, Sailor the Savior, ASAP Spurg, he says, if you need privacy, use Monero. Andrea says, if you need privacy, use Monero. Cyphidian says, Bitcoin fungibility doesn't matter. The space in general is completely capitulating, freaking incredible. Now, we looked at other people a few weeks ago who had said that, hey, if you want to like have digital gold, quote unquote, well, you can hold Bitcoin and you can use Monero as a currency. In fact, it's probably better to use Monero as an actual cryptocurrency. And so we encourage people to use that instead of Bitcoin. You want to hodl your Bitcoin and all this stuff, which is ridiculous, right? But even you have those people who are capitulating and saying that, yeah, Monero is actually a better cryptocurrency for payment, and we should start to maybe use that instead because it's more fungible, it's more private, it's quicker, and all that stuff. But yeah, the whole space is completely capitulating, and Max Kaiser has spoken pretty positively about Monero as well. And we did make a video about 8-9 months ago talking about all of the great crypto all-stars who have commented on Monero. John McAfee was one of those people, God bless him. And I still like his theory that Bitcoin's going to zero. I think it's going to zero. He's got some really good videos on that out there. But yeah, he had his pretty strong opinions on that, even though he did say at one point, if Bitcoin doesn't hit $1 million, I'm going to eat my banana on live TV. You guys remember that? But yeah, the whole space, it's not completely capitulating. That when the space starts to capitulate, you'll know. you'll see it in the price, because people hang on to Michael Saylor, Andreas, and whoever this dude's every word. And if they start to come out and say, well, frankly, I wouldn't want Saylor to come out and support Monero. I don't want him to be a Monero bro. The space is too cool for somebody like Michael Saylor, in my opinion. Anyways, not to judge, but there would be like a huge move. And to be honest with you, it could be that a lot of these Bitcoin bros, these prominent ones, see the shift already happening, but they don't want to say anything yet because they want to load up their bags first. And they want to take advantage of the atomic swap channels that are still there and people are still using right now before, the Monero bros wake up and say, hey, you know what, I don't want Bitcoin. There seems to be a transition happening right now where people are going into Monero from Bitcoin. Why would I want to go into the other direction? And by the way, I could be getting tainted Bitcoin. Who knows? A lot of people are probably going to get tainted Bitcoin through these non-standard KYC channels, right? Which happens all the time on BISC, by the way. And two, Bitcoin bros may want to just really get Monero before other people wake up to how valuable it is, because they want to get in first before everybody else. Because, again, the game theory thing kicks in. If you get into Monero before everybody else, well, your gains are going to be completely private. Nobody's going to even know how much you've succeeded. Nobody's going to even be able to track your wallet and say, whoa, you got lots of gains, bro. And when we talk about unrealized capital gains taxes later in this video, you're going to realize perhaps the value of that. Now, I'm a tax accountant. I don't advise anyone to evade taxes or do anything like that. You got to pay your taxes, blah, blah, blah. Disclaimer, disclaimer. But I'm just telling you what people are going to be thinking, right? So that's something to note. But yeah, he's waking up to this. Crypto Grampy, always on the set. And there is sort of like this Bitcope. I got to do another Bitcope video, but we keep hearing how the circular economy is going to fix Bitcoin's privacy issues, and the more people that use this stuff outside of like corporates and governments, even though you have a lot of Bitcoin bros advocating for corporates and governments to adopt this stuff, the more people that use it outside of those like official channels, the more decentralized, the more private that Bitcoin can be. But you have to consider that businesses are not going to want to have other people that they're trading with peer into their wallet and see everything that's going on, right? And to be private with this stuff, I mean, it's you're gonna have to hire like a PhD computer scientist to figure out how to do that, at least when you're running a business and you have a lot of transactions going on all the time. You're gonna need somebody who's all like on the job trying to sort that out properly, because you can make a lot of mistakes in the process. We've talked about that, but it doesn't. Crypto Grampy makes a good note. He says, others like saying that private businesses will magically stop tracking their users and competitors after they start accepting Bitcoin, making privacy unnecessary, clown face. Yeah. People aren't going to like that. People would rather use something like Monero or probably increasingly Darrow if they're doing smart contract stuff. And smart contract stuff is, I think, going to be used a lot in businesses going into the future. And you're going to probably want private smart contracts, which, by the way, Darrow is out on the main net, if you guys didn't get that news. And you've got to do some interesting flip chain stuff where you've got to take your Darrow, which was on the prior blockchain, and move it to Stargate. Maybe I'll make a video on that later, but that's something you want to look into if you're a Darrow holder. You've got like a few months in order to get that transferred over to the new blockchain. So just want to note that for you guys. Yeah, you got Nick Sabo, who's now saying that Monero is a very good privacy complement to Bitcoin. They're both very good money. Well, Bitcoin technically isn't money because of the fungibility thing. Sorry, I just got to be fastidious and particular about that. Yeah, we could go and there's so much to get to. Let's just skip to the next thing. But here's Andreas back in 2015 talking about mining centralization, white and blacklist, and fungibility. Let's listen in. Let me get the volume right.
Exchanges, but exchanges really wouldn't be able to do this effectively. It would have to be miners.
Check it out.
So to repeat the question, what happens if there is discrimination in the processing of transactions by miners or exchanges, but exchanges really wouldn't be able to do this effectively. It would have to be miners, where they discriminate between, for example, making payments to one recipient versus another, start using whitelisting or blacklisting, and then by doing that, destroy the core fungibility principle of the currency. Fungibility is a principle in economics that says that a token of value, such as a currency, a coin, is indistinguishable from any other coin. So, you can't say, I will accept US dollars, but only if their serial number is odd. If it's even, that's devil money. I won't touch it, right? You say that, you're breaking the law. You can't do that. The law requires you to treat you can't say, I don't like this serial number, I won't accept this money. It's not real. And the government can't say that either, so that creates fungibility. Every dollar bill is fully exchangeable for any other dollar bill and fully equivalent. That principle is fundamental to a currency, and if you destroy fungibility, you destroy the means of exchange function of the currency, and then it becomes very difficult. If, for example, in Bitcoin you created whitelists or blacklists that said, we found the empty Gox coins that were stolen. So here's a list loaded on your computer. If anybody presents you with one of these Bitcoins that were part of the empty Gox theft, then don't accept it. And none of the miners will mine transactions with these coins. We'll just cut them off the network. That destroys the fundamental value of the currency, because what it does then is it imposes a burden on everyone. If you receive money, now you don't know if it's real unless you also checked it against the latest version of the blacklist to see if it's not one of the banned ones. And you can't do that. That doesn't scale. So it will fundamentally destroy the currency. If there was enough centralization in mining to adopt that kind of policy, that would be a destructive event for Bitcoin.
So yeah, go look up our videos on that. We've been harping on that for many, many months, starting with our video on the reality of Bitcoin censorship, and then talking about the great American Bitcoin rush, mining rush or something like that. And then we have talked multiple times about it since. One thing that we pointed out with the mining centralization is that you don't need to have 50% necessarily in order to start to censor transactions on the blockchain. Jiraj Bednar has done pretty good work on pointing out that you could have 10% and have significant influence on the censorability of the Bitcoin blockchain. Now, the American hash rate for Bitcoin, I think, is at around 35%. We haven't received an updated number in the last few months. The last data that I saw goes back to August or October of last year that said, yeah, the U.S. was about 35%, but that was before the Kazakhstan situation. That was before the Ruski situation. Russia had about 10%, even though they kind of adopted it, and so maybe their numbers went up a little bit. But Kazakhstan, a lot of the miners moved out of there because, A, it was an in-between point between China and wherever they were going to go next, and then, B, you had energy crises, you had protests, and you had instability in the country, which made a lot of people move out of there. And they had about, I think, 18% of the mining hash rate. A lot of that invariably probably went to the United States. Also looking at the European energy crisis, you have a lot of those people moving back to the States as well, because relative to the rest of the world, gas in the United States is actually pretty cheap. So the hash rate could have gone even higher. And we've seen more partnerships and more cooperation between the Canadian government and the United States government in regards to financial matters. They're very tight. And so given that Canada is about 10% of the hash rate and America could have about 40%, they have more than enough capacity in order to censor transactions. One thing that I pointed out was that when Russia started to adopt Bitcoin, I saw that as a huge harbinger of OFAC getting more involved with the Bitcoin mining sector. In telling corporate miners, which a lot of these miners are now corporate, BlackRock and other big institutional investors are actually investing in Bitcoin mining here in the States, and BlackRock is pretty much the U.S. government. It's basically the oligarchical financial system. given that Bitcoin was adopted by Russia, they have the perfect excuse now in order to get involved with the Bitcoin blockchain and determine, or at least set standards for miners to abide by if certain transactions are going through their pool. And now that Russia is involved with what it's involved in, and now that they're going to try to evade sanctions using Bitcoin, from what I hear, I heard that they're going to start to take Bitcoin for oil, which is a pretty big development. But with that going on, I mean, now you're threatening the petrodollar with Bitcoin directly from America's biggest adversary. So I see that as prime for a move on censorship of the Bitcoin blockchain. I think OFAC, which is the Office of Foreign Asset Control, which is the Office of the Treasury, which is responsible for sanctions, I think they could start to mandate compliant Bitcoin mining pools. And given how SJW, it seems, the Bitcoin world has become with this Ukraine stuff and other matters, I mean, they could start to do it themselves. So that's something to consider. The fact is, you don't even need the government to make mandates on this stuff. I mean, you have people so brainwashed by everything that's going on right now that you could have sort of groups of people who are miners link up with themselves and form like alliances and coalitions to not mine certain Bitcoins. I mean, that could happen, right? Corporations could do that. I mean, we've seen corporations take certain initiatives that weren't even mandated by the government but served the government interest. The government didn't necessarily have to tell these companies to move out of Russia. They just did so by their own accord because, you know, they want to do the right thing. Same thing with all this Pride Parade stuff, and same thing with every other issue, Black Lives Matter. I mean, the government doesn't mandate these things. The corporations just do it on their own. And given that a lot of these corporations are invested in by BlackRock, and BlackRock's all about this ESG stuff, and that means a lot of these other corporations have to be, because BlackRock has all the money, and because BlackRock is pretty much the tip of the spear when it comes to this moral degeneracy, which is happening in the country, or at least one of the main nodes. I mean, you can anticipate that maybe the corporations just decide among themselves to have this policy, if they want to be invested in by the likes of BlackRock, which is investing in them, to not have certain transactions be transacted. So, I mean, that's something to consider. That could definitely happen, which means the fungibility is just going to get freaking worse from here, which is hard to imagine. I mean, it's already pretty bad, but more people are going to wake up to this. More people are going to see this as a problem, and that is something to consider. Here is Andres again. Check it out.
Or, you know, someone fighting a dictator in some horrible totalitarian nightmare scenario, then yeah, I'd use Monero for that. If you're
so he's basically saying, if you're in a tyrannical situation, you'd rather have Monero than Bitcoin. That's essentially what Andreas just said. Okay, let me ask you guys: do you think the world is becoming more tyrannical or less tyrannical? You tell me. With the Canadian stuff going on, with what we're seeing in Europe, and what we're likely going to be seeing with rationing of resources, and given that we're going into a state of like war hysteria, I mean, you know, that could be making a comeback too. That feeds into tyrannical impulses as well. The world's becoming more tyrannical, guys. I don't have to tell you that. It's obvious to anyone who watches this channel. But seriously, Monero is more suited to take the pressure. It's more suited to serve people like you and me in this environment than Bitcoin. Okay, we've made that point 1,000 times. We don't need to go back through it. But that's Andreas saying that. Moving on. Here's Michael again, referencing Adam Back. Now, we've played this clip a number of times here on the channel, but it's worth referencing again because this is Adam Back. This is the Blockstream founder and CEO. He's one of the biggest Bitcoin bros there are. And here he is saying, yeah, fungibility in Bitcoin is worse than PayPal. So let's listen.
Or maybe, you know, it happens in one confirmation. But generally, once you receive a Bitcoin, you have a Bitcoin, and that's final. And so even with banks and PayPal, who sometimes shut down accounts for trivial reasons or even for no reason at all, it's typically not the case that if somebody who sent you money, so if you were selling something on eBay and somebody bought an item from you and that person had their account shut down, the money that you received would not be removed from your PayPal wallet. And yet this kind of effect that people multiple hops removed from you who are sending you Bitcoins, if they are associated with some trade on Silk Road or something like that, it turns out that some of the exchanges and hosted wallets are using sort of taint tracing services, and up to 4 hops deep away from you, if something is associated with the Silk Road, they will freeze your account and ask you to take your funds and your custom elsewhere. So that, if you look at it from this perspective, the reality is that for people using those services, fungibility in Bitcoin is actually worse than PayPal, because other people's actions which have got nothing to do with you, and you have essentially potentially no connection whatsoever with, 4 hops away is a very long way away. I dare say, potentially just about anybody with Bitcoins in their wallet who have done a few trades are within 4 hops of, anybody in the Bitcoin ecosystem potentially. It's a very interconnected system, like the kind of social networking theory.
Dude, what he basically just said was, if you didn't listen, he said that anyone with Bitcoins probably has Bitcoin or maybe has Bitcoin that is tainted, that could get you kicked off an exchange, that could get your loans called back on BlockFi, and that could get you maybe implicated in criminal activity. Okay, that's why. That's one reason why Arctic Mind doesn't have any Bitcoin. We've talked about that with him in a couple interviews. He's like, yeah, I won't even hold it because of just how much you can be implicated in just by getting Bitcoin. And remember, we talked about Fuentes, how he was caught up in this January 6th thing. And you'll remember the select January 6th committee, which had called Fuentes to Congress to testify, had said in their statement that, yes, he was here, he was there, he said this, did that. And then they included like this segment there in the statement that said, yes, and by the way, Nick Fuentes got like $500,000 in Bitcoin from some French computer programmer. Now, as far as anyone knows, there's no evidence to suggest that that had any linkage with his activity on January 6th. But they just threw that in there because they just wanted to make it look like, oh, well, he received money from a foreign actor, and this foreign actor had died, actually, and therefore there's some weird stuff going on here. And so you may not even be guilty of anything, but you could be held responsible. And this is actually what happened recently with somebody who had set up a loan on BlockFi. They had received Bitcoin off BISC, which is a decentralized peer-to-peer exchange, and that Bitcoin had been involved with a Coinjoin before it had gone on to BISC to be traded to this guy who put it up as collateral for a BlockFi loan. The loan got called back because of not of anything this guy did, but because of the guy who mixed his coins before. And we've talked about mixers, the problem with that, how they can identify pretty much now whoever is using a mixer, and the fact that they can identify who is using a mixer when Bitcoins are being used in the mixer, they can just look at those Bitcoins, even though they're private, maybe not associated with you. Well, boom. It's just tainted anyway for using the mixer because it's a high-risk activity, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, this is a significant problem. This is a significant problem, and you're starting to see more Bitcoin bros wake up to this and just say, hey, cool, Monero seems to have solved this problem. Let's just get into Monero. Just keep it simple. And I see some Monero bros out there who I do respect saying, yeah, Bitcoin fixed these problems, that'd be great. And yeah, I definitely support reading a couple Bitcoin privacy guides. See this. I don't understand this approach. What's the point in dabbling and kind of doing this copium stuff with Bitcoin if you've already got Monero as a solution? I don't understand this. Maybe it has to do with sort of like, marketing. It's like Bitcoin's first to market, so it'd be cool if like the market leader could adapt to the times and adopt some of Monero's technology, which makes Monero great. Maybe that's what it is, but I'm a simple guy, man. Like, if something works, I'm just going to go with it and promote it. Monero works. That's why I'm going with it and I promote it. Like, I'm not reading privacy guides. I'm not making anything more complicated than it has to be. Monero is just there. It works. Why am I going to get involved in anything else? So that's something I want to point out. I do see a little bit of that. Michael then says, and we're going to read more of Michael's tweets. I like this guy. You got to follow him. He says, can anyone following me that's entrenched in the Bitcoin space help me understand why there aren't many talks around privacy, fungibility, and miner centralization after 2017? It seems like there was a hard pivot from cypherpunk culture to NGU corporate culture. That's right. You said it perfectly, brother. And this guy says the narrative was hijacked. We've talked about that a little bit with the Crypto Coup d'etat series. Check out our MasterCard video. Check out the Digital Currency Group videos and our Talks with Money Today show. I wonder how you're doing, Money Today show. It's been a while. Wonder how things are in Albania. But yeah, go check out his channel. He goes deep into how much these corporations and basically the New World Order are involved with the new crypto world order, and how much they're behind Ethereum, how much they promote Bitcoin, and how much they're all about the surveillance coins and crypto as a whole, as a technology which is used to create this like panopticonical surveillance system, which we're all going to be moving into. So, yep. So this guy says, it's a huge problem, in my opinion, and no one in power with Core seems to be vocal about it. I've been willing to help fund privacy features in Bitcoin for some time. No one has taken me up on it. This is said by Bill Barheit. Seems to be a prominent Bitcoin bro. And one thing I want to point out is when we were talking about ESG, there's a good Coin Bureau video on it, but he had mentioned in that video that Bitcoin developers were on like this list, this MSCI list, which was basically this ESG compliance list. And they were on there as individuals, not even as companies. And from what I understand, the Bitcoin Core developers, I think, are kind of either voluntarily on board with sort of like all this ESG stuff and, not making this thing too private, or they've been compromised to some degree. Now, I don't know that for sure. I'm just being speculative here, but that could be what's going on. I don't know how private the Bitcoin developers are, but I would imagine if you're making a monetary system which competes with the dollar, you're going to have a lot of people sniffing around trying to get after you and get you compromised, right? You're going to have a lot of people trying to get into that inner circle, which is why it's good that a lot of the Monero developers have remained pretty private since the beginning. So that's something that's good to note. Moving on, we're just going to check out more of Michael's tweets here. Based Monero Chad. I don't know if he's an avowed Monero Chad. I think he's trying to sort of deliberate with the Bitcoin bros a little bit about the problems, which is reasonable. But again, going back to what we said earlier, why not just go with whatever works? But he's been part of the Bitcoin space for a while, so I understand why, being part of that space, you'd want to at least get some closure with the community. At least make an attempt to try to redirect it before you just throw up your hands and say, yeah, I'm off to Monero, guys. See ya. Because then it just kind of makes you look like, maybe disloyal or something like this. I don't know. If I were this guy, I'd just go to Monero. But, hey, he's got probably decent values. I really like this guy, I'm telling you. Let's read some of his tweets. Oh, this is so base. This is a new one. He says, I consider Bitcoin an ideology. It is a system built on top of certain principles, primarily private property rights and individual sovereignty. Anyone in the space that promotes ideas counter this ethos, I consider a type of ideological attack. Interesting. But it's interesting. I threw the word private property rights in there, the word private particularly. He just said property rights. Because, if you've got Bitcoin, I don't know how private your property rights are. We've talked about where it's like, if the KGB knows that you've got Bitcoin, they come to your door and they're like, hey, give me Bitcoin. What are you going to say? I guess my seed phrase? No, they're just going to take it to a gulag, right? So how much is your Bitcoin actually safe if it's on a grid that's being surveilled and, the authorities know you have it? Or maybe not even the authorities, but some, jaywalker down the street who is able to sniff out how much you got in your wallet because maybe they know a little computer science. I don't know. Let's read more of his tweets, bruh. Today in Bitcoin clown world, I'm an anarchist, but the government should be able to target and sanction anyone I don't like. Dude, oh my gosh, this is the guy that we talked about in our Bitcoat video. Go check out our first Bitcoat video. This guy, I love it, man. Oh, dude, You guys ever get that feeling when you find like a fellow bass bro out there in the world? It's just like, whoa, you know about this, you know about that, you're on board with this. Like, we can't even talk about this out there, but like, we're on the same wavelength, man. Like, that's what I feel about this guy. We'll read more tweets, but yeah, he's calling out the same people we were calling out a few months ago. Because I believe, if I recall our conversation with this guy, it was sort of like, I was pointing out to him that if you really wanted to survive the quote-unquote monetary reset, you're probably going to want something like Monero rather than Bitcoin. And he was like, well, I can't remember the conversation. Let's just move on. Basically, it came down to, yeah, I admit that Monero is better than Bitcoin, but we got to go with Bitcoin because Bitcoin's Bitcoin. Like, it was essentially like a tautology, but let's move on. Start doing what you need to do to live around people who respect your right to live, or you're going to be surrounded by people who will make your life a living hell. The worst of clown world is yet to come. So base tweet. And yeah, you guys should join like an Orthodox church. I think you'll find a lot of base people there who are cool. That's been my experience. Bitcoin fungibility is worse than PayPal. Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah, the surveillance methods are only getting better. Meanwhile, Bitcoin's privacy is going nowhere. And think about it. The blockchain analytical capacities of these companies like CipherTrace and Chainalysis are going exponential. Meanwhile, Bitcoin's privacy is doing nothing. It's not improving. And some people hearken the Lightning Network as a solution. Not really. We've talked about that. It's probably going to be very centralized because of the structure and the setup and the incentives which are inbuilt with that system. But that's a whole can of worms. He's talking about Gladstein. I haven't made too many comments on Gladstein. I don't know too much about him, so I'm going to hold off on judgment. But he says he's a communist Trojan horse who's entered the walls of the Bitcoin space. Yeah, you got a lot of communists in the Bitcoin space, but you also got a lot of communists in the Monero space too. You've got people in the Monero space who are funding the Ukrainian military. You've got people in the Monero space who are all about this, like, liberal degenerate culture. You've got a lot of people in the Monero space who are about big government and forcing people to be inoculated with this death jab. Yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of that stuff in the Monero space too. That's not something necessarily to be concerned about because, again, this is just money. You can expect this stuff to be used for evil more than good. It's just you got to be out there to push the good, even though you're kind of facing up against the world, right? The sinful world. But it is what it is. Notice how communists only care about moral standards when it suits their needs. Yep. Talking about the communists. I love it! Down with the communists. Chainalysis has testified to Congress that it can not only surveil with accuracy the blockchain, but they can even extend this to Coinjoins. Yeah, I mean, we'll get to an example of somebody's Bitcoin which was demixed 6 years after they had initially mixed it. Crazy story. We'll get to it later in this video. This is going to be a long video. It's just a catch-up video. There's a lot to go through. But one thing I want to point out is it could be they may not be able to surveil it as well as they say they can. Obviously, they market themselves as being able to do a lot of surveillance to a rather competent and proficient degree. But the thing is, maybe they can't surveil it as well as they say they can, but they get you caught up anyway, because with Bitcoin, you can at least figure out people's identities. And if maybe there's a mistake in their surveillance, that mistake could actually cost you your Bitcoin or some level of freedom. Maybe you get arrested because you're implicated in some attack on the country. I don't know. So the fact that it could be surveilled at all is not comforting because, that could be used for or against you in ways that you don't quite understand. Moving on. There are a lot of Bitcoiners that project their hopes and dreams of what Bitcoin ought to be onto what Bitcoin actually is. I think that's right. That's right. And you see a lot of people like, oh, well, the Lightning Network's going to fix all of our problems. It's going to be scalable. It's going to be private. It's going to be awesome. And we're not seeing that quite yet. So, yeah, he's red-pilled on the jab. Guys, give this guy a follow. Like, he's my new best friend. He doesn't even know who I am, probably. But honestly, it's almost like he watches our videos. But it could be he's just at a certain IQ that he just gets it, He's been on Monero Talk, I guess. I go watch that. Based. Yeah, he just went down the rabbit hole recently. So let's go back to when he really started to wake up. Because I got that same feeling too, and I'm sure a lot of you did, where it's like you felt like kind of like it's like you felt betrayed to a certain degree. It's like you were told crypto is supposed to be this. You were told that we were going to defeat the central banks. You were told that we're going to have our own monetary system, and in a certain number of years, this is just going to go parabolic. Everything's going to take off, and we're going to defeat the central banks. We're going to save civilization. You were told that this is cryptocurrency, and the implication was it's private money that can't be tracked and traced, and the government can't get a foothold on this. And it's just after one compromise, after another compromise, one after another, it's just you feel at the end of the day that, man, I feel like I've been ripped off. I feel like I've been finagled into buying this crypto that ultimately doesn't do the job that it was advertised to do. And you start to go down the rabbit hole and you realize who's behind a lot of this stuff, like the digital currency group, who's behind Adam Back and the funding of Blockstream, and how the events of 2017 with the Blockstream wars kind of reoriented the direction of crypto towards store of value theory rather than medium of exchange being important. I mean, you really wake up to kind of the danger that we all could be walking into, because if we really embrace cryptocurrencies which can be easily surveilled, dude, not good. I don't have to explain that to you guys. Not good. It's not what we want to have happen. So he's got a lot of tweets here. It's going to take a sec, but it's good to see more of these guys waking up. It's very, very important. But I believe he started to get red-pilled on all this stuff about March 8th. Dude, you've got so many tweets, bro. It's good, but how do I get down to where this all started? I might just have to cut this out. Forgive me. Or we could just read the stuff along the way. Everything on the Bitcoin blockchain is being surveilled by Chainalysis. Everything. If you send a Coinjoin UTXO to a service with KYC, you are on a list. Just a heads up. Yep. Michael Krieger, he's got a pretty good tweet. The Bitcoin influencer personality just gets worse and worse over time. Makes sense as more normies get interested, but it's painful nonetheless. Just endless regurgitated superficial nonsense and fiat celebrity culture stupidity. It's unbearably cringe, and I'm a Bitcoin fan. Yeah, I mean, Sailor the Savior, ASAP Spurg, I can't believe that people can't see how much of a demon that guy is. I mean, seriously. It's just so obvious for everyone to see. He's just a godless... Look at, and I'm not trying to be too judgmental here, but look at the video we did. I think I exclusively posted it on Odyssey, where we looked back at his history. And if you look to 2002, during the big tech run-up bubble, the guy wanted to implant people with microchips, okay? And he wanted to read their thoughts and have him transmit his thoughts to them. Dude, that's the guy you're dealing with. And he's got a lot of, Gnostic art in his house. And he makes all these biblical quotes on Twitter as to be cute and how Bitcoin's like this new fun religion and we can use Bible quotes in order to just make it sort of like a meme. It's like, whoa, dude. Whoa, this is like way out of control. But a lot of people see it as fun and funny. It's not. I think it's going to be y'all's downfall, dude. And I may seem like a puritanical type of dude pointing that stuff out, but I'm telling you, it's true. Anyway, so let's move on. Just look at the frequency of this guy tweeting. Like, this dude is just on a freaking campaign, dude. This guy's on a mission. He's like, I got to tell the world about this stuff that I just woke up to. That's been basically us on this channel for the last year. It's like, listen to us. You're going the wrong direction. It's a trap. But, yeah. Your daily reminder, Bitcoin is not fungible. All UTXOs are being surveilled, tracked, and traced by Chainalysis. And the state is weaponizing the transparency of the blockchain. Yes, they are, indeed. Yeah, I might just have to skip to the next thing. There's so many things that this dude's pointing out. I might just get you guys to read this. Yeah. Let's just move to the next stuff. Just read his feed. You'll get a good education. But honestly, just somebody send Michael here our videos so that he can get kind of red-pilled on everything that's going on, even more to a higher degree. But he's based. He loves God. He loves America. He's anti-communist. Exactly the kind of guy we need in the Monero Battalion. So let's just get to the news, guys. Let's get to the news. I'm going to Take my jacket off real quick. It's gonna get hot, bro. You guys are gonna love this, man. Ever since day one on the channel, we've been talking about unrealized capital gains tax. Seriously, go to the first video that we made. I think we probably sound a little bit crazy. Like, wait, they're gonna tax money that I haven't actually earned yet? Yeah. They want everything, guys. If you guys understand a couple basic data points, if you guys understand that they want not just your money, but they want your freedom, they want your bodily autonomy, they want your soul, if you understand that, it's not even a big surprise that, yeah, they want unrealized capital gains tax and they want to tax money that you haven't even earned yet. Of course. To ordinary people, that could be a shocker and a surprise. Dude, with everything we've seen over the last 5 years, why would you think there would be a certain point where they stop and they're like, well, that's going a little too far? No, it's going to get more clown world, as Michael said. So this is just the next iteration of that. And we've talked about how in the last Build Back Better bill, they wanted to implement what they called the billionaires' income tax. Now they're calling it a minimum tax. Basically, it's unrealized capital gains taxes on the billionaires, the billionaire bros. And so this is going to make a comeback. We don't need to talk about the background in regards to this stuff, how it affects crypto, because I'll just link a video. I mean, we don't need to go into all of it again. But yeah, we're seeing it make a comeback. They're not going to stop. They're going to try to get this camel's nose under the tent. And then once they tax the billionaires in this particular way, then it's going to move its own way down to everybody. And that's what happened with the income tax, if you recall. The income tax was just for like the highest 1% of the population. It was to fund the war effort. We were in a war. Hey, sound familiar? And so we need to do extraordinary things, and we need to enact new legislation, which at the time was like debated to be unconstitutional, in order to raise more money for the government, for the war effort, to defend our country, right? And as the economic collapse continues, more people are going to be more desperate. There's going to be more justifications made for more crazy policies like this to be moved down to the rest of the population, and the income tax moved down to, as you can see now, the rest of the population. So yeah, it's going to move and expand from there. It's just part of the new fuel society. So the quasi-wealth tax, and this is from zerohedge.com, who I know I was hating on a little bit earlier in this video, but they really do have good stuff. The quasi-wealth tax comes as Biden and Manchin look to revive a scaled-back version of Build Back Better. The White House is planning on including a budget placeholder known as the Deficit Neutral Reserve Fund, essentially a blank space that the final BBP proposal can be pledged into later. We don't need to go into the details of that. As the New York Times pointed out, that the proposal marks the first time since Biden has explicitly talked for a wealth tax, although it's not quite as extreme as the wealth tax envisioned by ultra-liberal Dems like Elizabeth Warren. The tax will reportedly impact the 700 wealthiest Americans. What's more, the White House has christened the plan the billionaire minimum income tax. So it's not even income, it's like unearned income. According to the proposal, billionaires who already pay more than 20% of their total income plus capital gains won't owe more, but those who pay less will be required to make up the difference. If enacted, the White House believes the taxes will raise roughly $360 billion of revenue, which will probably be spent in 5 seconds based on the spending of the government. And it's essentially unrealized capital gains taxes. Let me see if I can find the quote. Yeah, they're going to do this in order to try to rally the lower classes and say, yeah, go after the billionaires. So let me see if I can find somebody. Over the last year, ProPublica has been reporting on the secrets of the ultra wealth. And yeah, we've seen that with the Panama Papers, the Pandora Papers, the recent Credit Suisse story, which talked about how they were banking for, international criminals and things like this. So yeah, more people who are probably just looking at Monero because with all of these exposés, they probably want to have their wealth in another off-scaled system where you don't have to rely on third parties and custodians, which is Monero, right? But the liquidity right now is a little bit too low for Monero. Astonishingly, it's still at like a $4 or $5 billion market cap. Dude, it's crazy for me to sit here and the market cap for Monero having not moved over the last year with everything that we have seen with all the bullish cases that have been made, and I know we've got like 1,000 subscribers, it's not like anyone's really listening to us, but like seriously, the case for Monero couldn't be more hyper mega bullish, but still the market cap is the same as it was when we first did our videos back in, I think, like April of last year, May of last year. It's just insane. But people figure it out, man. But yeah, Elon Musk is like, yeah, the IRS should give me a cookie. Yeah. There's something about unrealized capital gains tax in here. That's basically what it is. Wealth tax is unrealized capital gains. But let's talk about price controls now. Yeah, we see the wealth taxes coming, the unrealized capital gains taxes, and I think that we had discussed how there's going to be global taxes moving into the space, and that's probably going to interlink with crypto, because we've read articles that talk about how they're going to simplify the tax code. Sovereign nations are going to have to sacrifice a little bit of their tax administrative autonomy in order to make it so that when crypto really gets off of the chain and becomes integrated into the new global economy, you can have an international tax code which is rather simplified relative to the national tax codes, which are more complicated and nuanced and specific to their national interests. They're going to have to make a more simplified international tax code, which is embedded into computer code, which is made interoperable with the blockchains, which by their nature are kind of borderless, right? So we've seen conversations about international tax administration, which is probably going to be the precedent for a political organization, a global government. That's something that you just see throughout history. Wherever you've got like an economic trade union or trade zone, like what happened with the European trade zone, which became the European Union, you have the establishment later of a political entity on top of that. It's just how history works, and so that's something to point out. And wealth taxes are definitely going to play into that. But yeah, they're talking about price controls, guys. They're talking about price controls. This is something we've been looking for. And there's actually an office, I didn't know this, which was established to enact price controls. Have you guys heard of this? It's called the Office of Price Administration and Consumer Supply. And this was to enact price controls during, I believe, the Nixon administration, which led to the growth of black markets, which is what we predict will happen. But with gas prices going up the way they are, with fertilizer prices going up the way they are, food prices, you're probably going to have bread lines, and you're probably going to have price controls so that everybody can get a little bit of the action, right? And we did see this a little bit with the Kufit situation, where you guys may recall you went into like a grocery store or a supermarket, and you can only buy like 2 loaves of bread, or you could buy one thing of meat. There's rationing. And if that really becomes integral in our lifestyle, you're going to have a huge black market which forms, because more people are going to want more than 2 loaves of bread, or they're going to want more than one little thing of beef. And so you're going to have black markets which form so that people can buy what they otherwise have a demand for, because the free market is always going to provide, it's always going to calculate prices and determine supply and demand for certain goods and services. And if that isn't allowed to happen in the regulated market because there's just too much regulation and price controls, then it's going to be offshored, quote unquote, to the black market. And by the way, with the war on cash going on, what's the black market currency du jour, which is probably going to be used? Monero, right? As it is on the dark webs right now. So that's another bullish case that I wanted to point out. But check it out. If the conflict drags out through the spring and summer months, however, real risk exists that high prices for gas and other commodities could undermine public support, political support. Right, that's why they do price controls in the first place. They're trying to appease the public, which is going to vote them out if conditions don't improve. Weakening the Western position against Russia. Well, weakening the political capital of those in power, certainly. Although blaming the president for high gas prices is not actually a rational position. What did I just read? That's the dumbest statement I've ever seen. So they're not shutting down pipelines. They're not increasing the regulatory burdens on people to set up new drilling operations and get more oil. No, they're just, no, it's irrational to blame the president. It's all Russia's fault. So that's the new narrative, right? So The connection between strategic imperatives and domestic economic factors is not new. Before Pearl Harbor, the Roosevelt administration worried that war mobilization would lead to runaway inflation as the supply of labor, raw materials, and basic consumer goods was outstripped by booming demand. FDR responded with price controls, right? As did Nixon, right? Price controls were used again during the Korean War, and then in varying ways and with varying degrees of success by the Truman, Kennedy, Johnson, and Nixon administrations. By the late 1970s, the shortfalls of some of these efforts, as well as the rise of market-oriented consensus that opposed such interventions, removed price controls from the menu of policy options available to presidents. Well, guess what? They're going to come back. And by the way, this guy right here, who unfortunately passed away, God bless you, Foo Fighters drummer. Well, we'll comment on that later. You guys probably knew what I was about to say, but let's leave that for another time. Most mainstream economists today oppose price controls. Yeah, well, they won't for long. When people start to get itchy on the streets for certain goods and services. And by the way, there's a huge correlation between price of goods and services, price of food in particular, and energy with social instability. And it looks like we're above the 2008 and 2011 highs, which led to the Occupy Wall Street protests, which led to the Arab Spring over in the Middle East. So, I mean, we're pretty close to something just snapping probably in some part of the world, which is going to lead to more instability. Maybe they grow a lot of wheat. Maybe they produce a lot of energy there, and that instability causes the problems in regards to those exports, which then increases and compounds the instability that we could see in other parts of the world, which would lead to, again, more compounding of that issue. So who knows? Ever more reason why there could be price controls in order to prevent that domino chain from falling. But at this point, with the Federal Reserve printing over the last 12 years, as we go into stagflation, as it's harder for them to raise interest rates in order to actually tamper down inflation, because if inflation, according to the CPI, is about 8%, and they're only raising the interest rates by 1/4 basis point per quarter, I mean, forget about it. I mean, you're not doing anything to fight inflation. That's not going to be enough. You got to go Paul Volcker. You got to hike those Benach's 20%, right? And if they do that, I mean, you're basically talking I Am Legend. I mean, it's basically going to be like Mad Max if that happens. So, yeah, they're in a tough spot. I don't think there's really much that can be done. But I would advise you guys to use Monero because black markets, as a result of this, are probably going to boom. And that means Monero itself is going to boom. Very bullish. Whatever the drawbacks of price controls, however, the issue is no longer one of economic policy alone. It is now a strategic problem, too, as the Biden administration's other options for cushioning the impact of Russian energy ban have their own downsides. And by the way, the sanctions aren't necessarily even on Russia because Russia has plenty of customers around the world which are willing to take their oil and take their exports. India, China, and Brazil, and South Africa. You can go on down the list. Most of Africa, right? So they're going to be fine, and our Gazprom position is probably going to be fine too. It's just we were cut off from trading it by the brokerage houses. Now, what's going to happen to our position, I don't know, but I still have the position. I'm still pretty bullish on it. I think I'm just raking in dividends at this point. Hopefully, I get them, and it's not totally conscripted for me, but I still think that Russian energy is going to do fine, and as the economic transition from west to east continues, because all that we really are at this point is a financial power with no core, right? We're just a hollowed out financial chicanery, jokester type of civilization here in the West. I mean, everything we do is a trick. It's just one big trick. Messing with interest rates, sanctioning people, controlling the gold and silver prices and commodity prices. Just everything's a joke. Everything's a game. Everything's a mirage in the West. We've got no real production or manufacturing. It's all gone. All the real exports for goods is coming from the new BRICS nations. You got Brazil, you got Russia, you got India, you got China, and you got South Africa. They produce a lot of this stuff. And the real economy is going to reorient itself because not everybody wants to work for cheap dollars, which are just printed out of thin air by the Fed. They'd rather work for other goods. They'd rather work for currencies maybe they could exchange for gold or maybe increasingly exchange for oil if the petro yuan gets off the ground, which it seems to be, because one story that we didn't comment on was the fact that Saudi Arabia now seems to be pivoting over to China. So that's something interesting to note. Let's move on. In recent days, for example, they're talking about doing stuff with Monero. But yeah, price controls could be coming. That's the main point. That's the main point. And we're going to talk about why black market conditions are also going to be probably booming This is from Investopedia, good article. And by the way, this was from, I believe, The Hill by Guan McKee. So, yeah, you guys know about black markets, surely, if you're into Monero. So, licensure-driven black market conditions. The licensing restrictions that governments impose on numerous occupations cause some workers to enter the black market because they don't want or can't afford to invest the time and money to obtain the required licenses. Or they don't want to get the stabby, and so they're not able to work. I mean, it could be as simple as that. I mean, so many people were kicked out of the economy last year, and they lost their jobs, and they couldn't find another one, me included, because I didn't want to go along with the program. It's not that I'm not competent or qualified to do the job that I otherwise could have, but I didn't want to have some medical procedure experimented on me with. So that could be playing into this stuff too. And with the CBDC now coming and integrating with that whole thing, this could lead to, again, more black market conditions, which could lead more people to alternative currencies that allow them to transact in that black market or unregulated market without surveillance. So that's going to be important. Trade-driven black market conditions. Sometimes participants in black markets don't want to act illegally, but because they lack the ability to work legally, they need to make money. They don't report their jobs or income to the government. Such situations arise when illegal immigrants obtain jobs. Well, what are we seeing a lot of, especially with the Biden administration? Well, a lot of illegal immigration. We're seeing that especially be the case for Europe, and with ever more refugees coming from all over the world, basically. It's not just Ukraine. I mean, a lot of these people who are coming to the West saying they're from Ukraine have been proven to be frauds. They're from like Africa or whatever, and India. And so you're going to have more people coming into the States. You're going to have more people coming to the West who don't have the proper paperwork, but, they're cheap labor. So you can pay them with Monero. Now, as much as I probably don't like that, yeah, it's just the reality of what's happening. Nothing we can really do about it. Black markets can also appear when government-imposed price ceilings create shortages. Now, we just talked about that. Economy-driven black market conditions. High unemployment can give rise to black markets. When workers can't find jobs in the above-ground economy, they may turn to jobs in the underground economy. Well, we're seeing more of that. And something which compounds this is the continued degeneration of the country. As you have more people lose faith in the future of the world, as you have more people lose faith in God, you have more people who just get into debaucherous stuff like drugs and like other things which aren't very good. And so what are they going to use? They're probably going to use Monero as we, again, move more into the cashless society. And given that some of these payment processing apps like Cash App and what's the other one? It starts with a T. I can't quite remember. But these Venmo. There we go. Well, they're coming out and they're saying that they're going to issue 1099s to people who have over a certain number of dollar transactions on their platform. And so people are looking at that saying, yeah, I don't want to deal with that. And I don't want my transactions to be tracked and recorded and reported in the first place, especially the IRS. Again, not saying disclaimer, you should not pay your taxes. I'm just telling you what people are going to be thinking. And so they're going to say, well, I'm just going to use a private cryptocurrency. I'm going to use Monero, right? So yeah, you just see the case compounding here for Monero. And we talked about the development of the CBDC. I believe we made the case for that. We don't need to go back through that. Let's move on. More tweets. How long have we gone on for? We got to be at an hour. Holy moly. I might have to break this up. So there's some news I want to talk about in regards to mixers. We talked a little bit about this. We're just going to go briefly through this. This is from Vlad, bro. When I first heard the news about Wasabi's coordinator planning to blacklist some addresses. So the Coinjoiners, the Bitcoin mixers, are going to start to blacklist addresses. Think about that. I mean, that's crazy. I didn't even see that reality playing out, but it's playing out. I was devastated. Been using Wasabi since February 2019. I've always liked the UX, the user interface, and simplicity, but instead of canceling them, I've decided to try to understand how and why this happened. I've tried to cope. Yeah, big cope. They're going to cope until the end, guys. Some people are just not going to make it. Moving on. If you could go back in time and show Satoshi one tweet, what would it be? This is from Untraceable. Don't trace me, bruh. Here's mine. This guy says there will be anyone Coinjoin. Wait. There will be anyone can Coinjoin Coinjoins. There will be exclusive blacklisted public Coinjoins. There will be invite-only whitelisted Coinjoins. So, like, you can start to see how the fungibility is starting to impact the Bitcoin mixing space, which was argued to be one of the tools that actually helped improve Bitcoin's fungibility, ironically enough. So this just goes back to, if it's not private on the base layer, you're just going to have problems in these other layers and these other tools, right? It's not going to be fixed on the ground level, which means the foundation is going to be built on sand rather than rock with Monero. So just use Monero. Just make it easy on you. Moving on. This is a story I want to talk about to you guys because this is just so key. I was going to talk about this, but it was already Lent, and so I just kind of forgot about it. But then I remembered it when I had looked up some of these tweets. This is from Seth for Privacy. He does a pretty good job giving the DL as to what happened here. Maybe you guys read about this a couple weeks ago, but let's just go through this briefly because this really highlights some important things that you got to know. Number one, he says, this story is absolutely nuts, and another in a long line of proofs that privacy on cryptocurrency is an issue that will come back to haunt people years after their activity. Remember, guys, anything you do on a public blockchain can and will be used against you. There is precedent for that. There have been court cases where the judges or the prosecutors or whoever looked onto the public blockchain. They didn't have to get warrants. They didn't have to get records. They just looked there because it's public information. That's what it's considered now. You have no right to privacy with your financial transactions if you're using a public blockchain that's been determined by law in court precedent. So if you do something on there, it's going to come back to bite you. And we saw that with the Bitcoin fog. How do you find the fog? Well, they found it because he was doing some nefarious mixing activity on the dark web, and they found him 10 years later after the fact, if I remember the story right. So it's there forever, and everything could be traced back to you, and depending on the crime that you could be doing, and remember, you could be implicated in a number of things that you may not even be aware of, right? Well, there may not be a statute of limitations for that. So that is just so key to note. I mean, moving on, this person's Wasabi wallet usage was demixed after 6 years by Chainalysis. So, insane. Moving on, he says his attempt to cash out due to not understanding how Grin works, which is a private crypto I've heard a little bit about. I've never promoted it. It was never really on my radar because of the whole blockchain pruning thing, which is what Litecoin had taken on as to be their privacy tool or implementation. They use Mimblewimble, and I believe Grin also uses Mimblewimble, if I remember right. There are privacy issues with that, namely, if you're using these tools which prune the blockchain, which essentially delete transactions after a certain period of time, somebody who's watching that blockchain could just not prune the blockchain. They could have their own model. They could see everything that's going on, and it could just be like another Bitcoin in their computer system. Now, maybe they have data overload, but who knows? It's just not as good as Monero, right? But he tried to use Grin, and apparently the funds were directly linked to his personal domain and email address. He didn't understand that Grin requires P2P communications to build transactions, linking his personal domain directly to his exchange withdrawal. Both of these tools were touted as cutting-edge privacy tools and yet utterly failed somebody who knew the need for privacy, was technically proficient, and knew tools he wanted to use to gain privacy. When privacy is not the default and not simple, even technical people fail. So it doesn't even matter if you're an expert at this stuff. You can know everything about Bitcoin privacy, but it could be that you just make a mistake, right? And if you make a mistake, boom, you're done. So he says, obviously not advocating for why he knew he needed privacy, but pointing out that even extremely technical users cannot properly use flawed privacy tools. Yeah, it's crazy, man. Crazy. And if you want to look at just how Orwellian and sophisticated the tracing tools of these blockchain analytical companies are, go check out our video on the Bitfinex hackers getting caught. There's like a whole expose from the Department of Justice as to how they did it. It's just going to make you spin in circles. Just like, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here. Monero, please. next story, I'd hate to ring the alarm bell again. Well, he's not really ringing it to the Monero bros. He's ringing it to the Bitcoin bros. Why is he doing that? Well, the EU Parliament leaves us no choice. This time it concerns a crackdown on unhosted wallets in the upcoming crypto AML regulation. The Econ Committee vote is on Thursday. Red flags, background. The EU Commission's AML package includes a revision of the transfer of funds regulation, TFR, that will extend the obligation of financial institutions to accompany transfer of funds with information on the payer and the payee to crypto assets. So again, we're seeing this in Canada now. We're seeing this in Europe, where they want to know where you're sending the Bitcoin to off the exchange. So, just stuff we've been telling you is coming. It's not even a surprise. Don't care. We could read more about it. Guys, you know what's coming. That's why you have the positions that you do. That's why you're not in these surveillance coins. I mean, obviously this crackdown's coming. What is this? Says Trey Boy Cardi. Who's this guy? Did I quote? Patrick Hansen. Thanks, Patrick. Hey, Coinbase, is this real? Is it over? And Coinbase says, starting on April 4th, Coinbase will introduce some changes required by Canadian regulations, specifically when you send crypto to another financial entity or money services business, and or such as another cryptocurrency exchange. TradeOgre, anyone? And the transaction is 1,000 Canadian dollars or more. We are legally required to ask you for information about the recipient of that transaction, their name and address. So, whoa, dude. Yep, you got to send it to somebody we like, the government, or we're going to flag you and shut you off. It's essentially what you just read. And they've already done that with people who have moved crypto from Coinbase or Kraken to TradeOgre. They've already shut down some people's accounts because, again, they're watching where your crypto goes off of the exchange. I mean, my mind was blown when I first learned that. But now people just know this because it's going to be part of the regulatory apparatus. It's just going to be what they do. Now, I don't know if you can get around this by doing small incremental transactions. Maybe it's like 1,000 transactions per day, in which case it's going to be like a really slow trickle out of your wallet. Of course, if they can still trace where you're taking your funds off the exchange anyway, they could just be like, oh, you're trying to get around our regulations. Isn't that cute? You would otherwise have to report this. You obviously don't want to report this because it's TradeOgre. You're getting some private cryptos who are doing some nefarious stuff over there, which is perfectly legal, by the way, to buy private cryptos. I don't even think they're doing anything illegal over at TradeOgre. I don't know. I'm not going to comment on that, but still, yeah, we see that coming. We see it coming. Coinbase back at it again. Canada is rapidly changing into a far more authoritarian state, slow enough to fool many, fast enough to alarm a few. Yep. Well, if the whole trucker thing didn't really perk your ears, then you're just not going to wake up. You're going to be in a gulag. You're going to be one of these people Solzhenitsyn talks about, where it's just like they're still loyal to the party even though they're literally necked up to a guillotine. Like, some people are just not going to get it. And Barry Silbert, old Barry, who is, I believe, the CEO of the Digital Currency Group, which we've done countless videos on. One of our favorite globalist corps. He says crypto market cap, $2 trillion. 5% of $2 trillion, $100 billion. Current market cap of all privacy tokens is less than $10 billion. Well, you got Monero at $4 to $5 billion. You've got Darrow at 200, 300 million. You got Pirate Chain around the same. Haven, I think, is at $100 million. Those are the ones that really matter. All the other ones are just kind of trash. I don't look into Zcash. It's basically a corporate entity. I don't know why anyone would invest in that. It's optional privacy too. We've talked about the issues with that, but yeah, I'm not too stoked on Zcash. That takes up a good bit of this $10 billion number, and you've got a lot of like weird other cryptos. Although I've heard some good things about Firo from you, CryptoMonk. You're pretty big on Firo. Looks like they're doing pretty good work over there, and I do see them in some Telegram chats. The Firo bros, they seem really smart and on top of things. They really do. But you also got Concealed Network. You've got Xano, which are some interesting projects I've looked into. I go check those out. They're interesting. Not making any avocations, but they're interesting. Same thing with Haven and Pirate Chain. Risky. I mean, I'm much more confident on Monero than really any of the other coins. Darrow looks pretty good, but I'm still just kind of like holding back, particularly now because we talked about in our Darrow video. Oh, am I moving this thing? Hold on. Because we talked about in our... Hello? Am I Oh, is my mic on? Hold on. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we talked about in our Darrow video how they're going to have a pre-mine, or they have had a pre-mine, and when they go to the main net, which they've done, they're going to sell a lot of that pre-mine Darrow in order to fund the marketing of the project. So I'm not going to give financial advice. None of this is, but I'm personally just kind of stepping back from Darrow just to see what happens, just see if there's just kind of like a consistent sell-off from the pre-mine coins, and just to see if the mainnet transition has hype, which still needs to wear off a little bit. I'm waiting for things to settle. There's a little too much excitement right now. But anyways, yeah, small market cap, total crypto market cap, $2 trillion. I mean, look, Dogecoin has a bigger market cap than all the private cryptos. That's all you got to know. Same thing with Sheep. So, yeah, people are sleeping on the market. I agree with you, Barry. But here's my question. Why would you have 5% of your crypto portfolio in an area which is so obviously hyper mega nuclear bullish? 5%? Oh, Barry, I would increase your allocation a bit, buddy. But he's got money. He's like the head of like one of the biggest crypto hedge funds. I don't need to tell him anything. He's got like Federal Reserve board chairmen as partners to his firm. Something to look into. Pretty interesting stuff. So, updates on Haveno. Maybe I should do this in a different video because we've already gone on a pretty long time. But this is from one of the developers on the project. 2 years and a lot of work later, Haveno Dex is almost a reality, and it will work the same way it was envisioned at the time. And he talks about the vision for it. But one thing I want to point out, and this was pointed out by Zaptosis, good friend of the channel, a Monero Bro Battalion General.
Gold.
Hey, stop talking. But he had made an interesting comment in regards to Haveno. And there are people who don't like this Haveno engine thing, which I had said seemed pretty bullish, actually, because a lot of that money, which was made from fees from the Haveno operation, would be funneled to Monero projects to upgrade the development of the project. But there is a good critique here from our bro Zaptosis, who, by the way, helped the truckers take Monero during the Canadian Freedom Convoy, which was a huge deal. Made a video on it. The more and more time goes on, the less I'm starting to like Haveno. Now they're going to have the engine council, quote unquote, and there will be arbiters who have control over the transactions should there be a dispute. That's something to note, guys, because as far as I'm concerned, this guy's kind of liberal, and I don't know if I want to be trusting the sentiments of some of these people. Now, it's going to be private, so maybe I'm just freaking out for no reason, but yeah, that's something to consider. As far as what I've read from this guy, there's no intention on turning this into like some weird KYC compliant bro type thing. That's the vibe that I'm getting. And from what I understand, if it moves in that direction, there could be a fork off Haveno to create something which is like Haveno except more based, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Less compliant bro-ish. But Zaptosis moves on. He says, I thought this would just be a decentralized swapping service for trading anonymously, nice and simple, not a full-on digital government. You have the core team, the council, the arbiters, a.k.a. legislative branch, executive branch, and judicial branch. This is too much garbage for me. If that's what Haveno is going to become, I think I'll stick with TradeOgre and other centralized no KYC exchanges. So that is that's an interesting critique. Let me know what you guys think. I think that is an interesting critique. But we'll see what happens. I'm still very bullish on it. Even if you've got sort of like a digital government type thing that's going to be happening, it's still a service that's going to be provided which could do a lot of good, which could bridge a lot of people from the unregulated economy to the regulated economy, because you're going to be able to exchange your national currencies for Monero, which is your black market currency, And if you can exchange your Monero then for the national currencies that you need to use to pay your taxes, your vendors, etc., well then you've really got a great bridge that links the two economies together, which is something I'm really excited about. It's going to be like the new world ATM of sorts. You're going to be able to go from your central bank digital currency, or maybe we still have, you're going to go from other cryptocurrencies too. And I focus a lot on the national currencies and Monero flopping, but you're actually going to have many other cryptos on there too. Presumably, you're going to have Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, and all these other cryptos, and you're going to be able to trade these things anonymously. That in and of itself is a huge deal, because you're not going to have to rely on centralized KYC exchanges like Coinbase. You can just do it on Haveno, and a lot of the people who trade cryptos out there, they know nothing about taxes, right? And I'm not saying evade your taxes again. I'm just telling you what people are going to be thinking. They're going to be like, oh, well, this makes my operations easier, so I'm just going to go on Haveno. So those are just some comments. Again, comply with the law. Do everything you can to pay your taxes, but I'm just telling you what people are going to be thinking and doing, especially with everything the government is doing and how they're wasting money and how they're destroying the country. You're probably going to have like tax protests and revolts, and maybe this plays into that. Again, just saying that as an objective statement with no advocacy for one activity or another. So, moving on, Trace Evader. I love Trace Evader. He's one of the few people that I have the bell rung for on Twitter. He just has the most base takes all the time. Very smart guy, good friend of the channel. He says XMR performance today is a direct result of flaws in Bitcoin, the blacklisting of 25,000 and growing active addresses. Some users affected may have dumped their Bitcoin from Monero. Will they go back to Bitcoin? Now, this is when Monero went up like 30% in a day. He said users who go back to Bitcoin will find themselves blacklisted again. This will affect all users because custodians are brutal censors. It will be dangerous for any Monero user to interact with Bitcoin. And that's a question that we have asked, is how many people are going to sign up to exchange their lovely, private, anonymous, no KYC Monero for Bitcoin? I mean, how many of these people who are Monero bros are going to like work with data intelligence and blockchain analytical firms in order to make sure the Bitcoin that they're swapping for is not, blacklisted by somebody, right? I mean, could you imagine a Monero bro like wanting to make sure the Bitcoin that they're getting isn't going to get them blacklisted or kicked off an exchange or something? Like, come on, no, I don't think so. But it could be. It could be. One thing that's just not really thought about when it comes to Bitcoin bros talking about how they can just swap from Monero is the fact that you've got somebody on the other end of the line who's going to receive that tainted Bitcoin, who's going to receive that dirt. Like, people just think of this atomic swap stuff as just sort of like this, machine or like this lifeless thing. No, it's like you're trading with another actual person who's going to receive that crap. And it's going to turn into this hot potato thing. And there are going to be incentives which play into that, which maybe cut off a lot of the liquidity or at least make the premium significantly high for getting your Bitcoin into Monero. At that point, you're just going to probably want to stay in Monero rather than have to put up with the high amount of premium that you're going to have to pay for using the service, right? So that's just something to know. At first, this could feel awful for privacy coins, and it may feel, in fact, like the industry is dying when we're in the middle. But eventually, you'll find Bitcoin dwindling to nothingness in the new privacy-central cryptocurrency market emerging from its ashes. I think that's right. I think that's right. Anything else? This has been kind of a long tweet, or a long video. Obviously, a long video. Yeah, I like stuff privacy, good takes. But let's look at our lovely trade ogre. Let's see what's going on. Pirate Chain back on top. Pirate Chain is at $2, $21. Pretty good. You guys remember recently went down to 60 cents. So that's a good little 4x increase from there. Maybe a good dip to buy. Again, we're seeing Darrow take these dips. We've seen it kind of in this downtrend over the last month or so. So that's something I'm looking out for. We could see more downward pressure from here. Obviously, the top is right there. Now we've got that. So I think in the long run, if everything continues to work out as intended, it's going way higher. But, if you're kind of looking into getting a decent dip, then, just look out for those variables. Haven is up quite a bit. Haven dropped down, I believe, around right here, or was it like around here? I think to like $1.50 now. It's at 4.5. That's pretty good. Pretty good dip. And how's Monero doing? Our lovely Monero, $212. Yeah, it's on the way up. Like you can feel the excitement, can't you? It's doing pretty good. So that's it. Just wanted to give you guys an update on what was going on. And our case is continuing to play out. If you guys have any other bullish cases that we haven't mentioned here on the channel, one, I'd be surprised, but two, let me know what you guys think. I think that's all I want to say. This is a little bit of a longer video. I know you guys like it short in many cases, but some of you like it long so that you can go on little road trips or whatever, go to work and just kind of tune out. But yeah, that's it. I don't know when the next video is going to be. This was kind of like just kind of like an update type thing. I don't know if it's going to be every day. We're getting to really, really busy parts of the tax season here. So I'd maybe wait a couple weeks, but that's about it. That's about it. Our thesis is playing out. Nothing that's going on is really that surprising to us. We're in the best positions ever, at least for crypto. So that's it. Monero Matteo. Check us out on social media links. Leave comments. Donation address is below. What else to mention? I think that's it. So it was good to see you guys. Hope that you guys are enjoying the new spring weather out there. It's just so nice outside. Go get some fresh air and enjoy life. That's all I got to say. God bless. God bless. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.